Hello, everybody out there. Anthony Romeo coming again to you on Wiseup. Today, first time ever, we have two for the price of one. We have JLL coming to us with their CIO and managing director, and we cannot thank them enough because of their hectic schedules. We have Edward Wagoner out of Chicago, hailing from the great state of Chicago, Illinois. Town, sorry. And Ram, I know I'm gonna butcher your name. I apologize, sir, but I'm gonna try very hard. Sri Navasan. Close enough, right? So I always talk about, products and the industry and what's IoT bringing, 5G, how the layer one infrastructure plays such a crucial role in the productivity, whether it be in the data center, in the office space, the home office, on the go. Today, JLL is a massive real estate empire. And I say this in a way that, though they're an American commercial real estate services company, but they work in the data center. We had the pleasure of having one of their vice president of technologies talking about the data center and what they're doing in the data center to help workflow and traffic. And that, guess what, folks, in case you haven't been living under a rock for the last 8 months, we've been turned upside down in over 180 countries. So companies like JLL are crucial in helping tenants out there that are trying to keep the ball rolling. So without further ado, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the opportunity out of your hectic schedules. If I can ask, in a nutshell, because JLL is such a massive organization and helping so many verticals, just summarize, what is it, the overall, because, I go to your website and it says you save the planet. How is it that you're saving the planet? Is it, you're planting trees on every building that you're erecting or managing? What is it that you say, is it a slogan, or do you stand by that, supporting the customers to help them, give them the reassurance to keep them agile as the things are being thrown at us so quickly, so rapidly? I know when Ram, you and I were talking earlier, you were saying it was like driving on a, Sunday, sunny day, nothing to happen. And then all of a sudden the world went dark. So now we have to pivot, we have to shift, and we need the intelligent folks like yourself out there in the company that to service the needs of the many. So if you will, gentlemen, again, thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be with you. And, it's funny as you were talking about how big JLL is. And I often tell people, you're sheltering at home, many of you. If you look out your window, you'll see my world. We're JLL, Ram and I could probably sit with you. And as you pointed out, different buildings outside, we could tell you what we do in that industry or for that asset or for a very similar client. So it is a big world, but we help and we save the world, if you will, one building at a time and actually one person at a time, because the people are what's the most important part of what we do. Without the people that come into our buildings, use our buildings, shop in our buildings, even with COVID front and center, we have huge healthcare practices. People are coming into facilities that we work with, that we help manage, that we help clean for healthcare services. So our focus has been, on the individual users, especially coming out of COVID. How do we give them more flexibility as they come back? You're seeing that a lot in the news, right? The ability to work from anywhere. How do we create better experiences? And you mentioned sustainability. That's not just how we more effectively do things like energy management in the building, but it's also the health and safety of the people as they come back. They want to be productive, but they want to know that we're doing the right things to give them a safe environment. And technology, by the way, plays a huge role in that. Right.
So, and one thing is that the show that we're streaming on iTunes, Spotify, and Anchor, Wiseup has been meeting with premier manufacturers such as Cisco, CommScope, Panduit, and many others, along with service providers and others that are talking about 5G integration and how that's allowing the workflow continue in this COVID world that we're all living in. It's not just New York or Chicago or up in Toronto. It's all around us. We can't get away from it. And whether we're working from the comforts of our home, like I am today, you can't skip a beat because work still needs to flow. Otherwise, we just lie down and die, right? So we need to ensure that our partners, like you folks there, are there for us and supporting. What kind of investments in tech space has a real estate company like JLL invested in?
So, if we go back just a couple of years, and by the way, JLL has had a focus on technology and data since I've been with the company, and that's 25 years. But it started changing fairly dramatically as we realized that we can make better decisions, faster decisions with the right data. As PropTech investments started focusing on the industry. I'll often say, and I use a US example of the Empire State Building. Real estate people built that without a laptop. It still stands beautiful. We all point to it. We'll never build another building without technology. And so in our new world, there's ways to do some things better and faster. You also, as you were talking, it dawned on me, we can't do things in vacuum. Quite often, Ram meets with a who's who of corporations out there, and he'll always come back to me and say, Eddie, this client, there's wonderful things we can do to help, but we also need to integrate with this that they have. And I think that's something that in the last couple of years has really emerged. When we go into the office, it's not just about the real estate piece of it, but it's the services and the experience that we get out of being in that office. And so that ability to integrate with what you do, with what other listeners do, to create together that productive, flexible space where people can come and be productive has probably never been more important. So to get to your answer, our focus on our investments are in things that can help us create those productive, flexible workplaces, or things that we can integrate with. And it's also not what you would always think of as traditional real estate technology. And I'll give you one example. We've made an investment in a motor company. And I've had people say, why is a real estate company?
Right. I was just going to ask you.
Well, think about what you know about buildings. There's motors all over buildings. Mm-hmm. And motor technology, they tell me, I'm not an expert on motors, but they tell me that the base technology for that's almost 100 years old. So there is a huge sustainability play, for example, to have a more efficient motor. But with technology embedded in the motor can also talk to us and tell us things. So we can use that from a predictive maintenance perspective. Right. That's right. We can use it to cycle things down when we see that our occupancy may not be as high as it should be. And for the landlords, the owners of the building, the efficiencies that they get out of that from a cost perspective actually adds value to the asset that they have. So it's a win-win-win across the board from a sustainability perspective, as well as creating value and creating better experiences for the people that occupy those spaces.
Yeah, I would also add.
Go ahead.
I'd also add to what Eddie said, Anthony. JLL manages something like 5 billion square feet of real estate globally.
A little bit.
So the external manifestation and what people associate JLL with is real estate. But for us internally, it's always been very clear that it's not the 5 billion square feet; it's the hundreds of millions of people who use and occupy that space.
Right.
And the clarion call has been for better experience in those spaces. And if we think about what COVID-19 has done, and this is where I think technology has a huge role to play, COVID-19 and the pandemic has challenged what we call psychological contracts with space. So psychological contracts are unwritten rules or contracts that we have with built environments. And one of the features is when I walk into this building will keep me safe.
Right.
Right now with COVID-19, people are questioning that. And I think the trust equation that people have with buildings can be shaped much better with technology. And technology has a huge, huge role to play here.
Oh, great point. Because I was going to say, based on what Eddie was saying and you point out, it definitely seems that the obvious is JLL is investing heavily in technology to support your tenants' needs going forward, not just today, but into the future. But what we keep seeing and what we continue to see across the platforms in every country is your Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies are sending out letters of communications, Disney, ABC, NASDAQ, and others are saying, we'll see you, our employees in July of 21. What is that? What does the future of real estate look like if, now you don't have all those people going into those particular spaces? I know you're making all these advantages to working or residing in a JLL run managed building with deploying the technology, but how to entice them more to come back into, as you pointed, Ram, the safe environment, and letting them know this. What is JLL doing to, get that blowhorn out and say, it's safe to work in our environment because, as Eddie pointed out, occupancy sensors, we're talking about social distancing and mask wearing. I know I had one of our previous guests on Wiseup. They were a security company, a security manufacturer company, and they have these kiosks that it would do facial recognition with the mask on, temperature reading, and also occupant, levels of how many people are in that space, and they would know the egress. So I'm sure JLL is deploying these things all around, but how are you advertising that to the client so that it gives them reassurance that not only are you doing all this technology, but how are you marketing to the masses for the tenants that currently reside, as well as the ones that are looking to go into spaces throughout the country, throughout the globe?
I want to address what you first said about companies or saying we'll see you in June or July, and that may be the current thing we're seeing in the news. But let's look at what's happening in reality, and we'll use the U.S. as an example. People want to be back out in space. We see that in news where people are going to gatherings, they're going to restaurants.
Guilty.
We could argue that we probably shouldn't, but our human nature is we don't want to be in our basement for the rest of our lives. We want to get back out there.
Right.
So people will return to work.
Right.
The question is, and I'll use myself and JLL as an example, we've reopened a huge majority of our offices, but we did it following a plan that Ram and team helped put together about what's the right way to do it, what's the phased way to do it. And then as they communicated that out, they did it in a way that, as Ram mentioned, that gave me options and communicated how, if I chose to return, or because of a role that I was working, if I needed to return, how I could feel safe. And if I didn't feel safe, how I could communicate that. And technology plays a huge role. I just mentioned just communication. How do we keep up with everything that's going on? But when I go back into the office, as an example, how do I book my desk and know that there's proper social distancing? We can use technology for that. How can we use utilization sensors? And this is a big play where we're working with and integrating with companies like yours and others. How do we have those sensors in the offices so that we can actually detect hotspots? The best plan that Ram and team will put together, we'll put it into reality, and a hotspot may pop up. How do we, when we detect those hotspots, tell the work order system and the cleaning vendors that, hey, we've got something you should go and take care of, make sure that it's properly cleaned in our new way. And then, by the way, make that transparent to all of the people in the office that we did all of these things that you reported to us, that you said we needed to take care of. And here's the proof of that so that they can see that. And that's a big way. And I talked about that in people terms versus technology terms.
Right.
That's a big way that we are helping people understand that when you're ready to return, we're ready for you. And we've got the tools and technology in place to help you be safe, to help you be productive, and to give you the flexibility that you need as you get back into your life.
I'd also
go ahead, Naram.
Anthony, one of the topics that you brought up was experience, right?
Right.
And this is the flip side of the argument to what Eddie just described. If I have ultimate flexibility and I'm hyper productive working from home, why would I come into the office? So this is a question that a lot of our clients ask us, and I think this has got to do with our human nature. Like Eddie pointed out, we're We're social animals, we're social beings. And physical environments, built environments, buildings, workplaces have been emblematic of things like company culture, things like brand. Some of these things are intangible and they're built over time. Social capital, for example, is built over time. Relationships, networks are built over time. Mentoring, coaching relationships are built over time. And you need a physical environment perhaps to do some of these effectively. And as we go forwards, I think workplaces will become even more driven by experience. And to make the experience seamless, and this is what some of our clients speak about, the Monday experience versus the Sunday experience. When they're at home, everything's connected, everything works seamlessly. It's Saturday or Sunday, it's the weekend, they're watching Netflix, they're on their phone, everything's perfect. They walk into their workplace, suddenly the overhead projector doesn't work, the Wi-Fi doesn't connect. So it's that Sunday versus Monday experience that people have. And I think increasingly, because the default state for people will be work from home versus work from office, perhaps in the future, the experience that people have when they go into the workplace will need to be even more seamless.
Right.
And that's what will keep them coming back in the future.
Right.
Experience
and
technology.
And by the way, Anthony, if I can jump in, we're talking a lot about office.
Right.
But many of our friends and neighbors don't work in an office.
Right.
If you think about so many of us when we went home and we would use our mobile devices to order our groceries or order consumer goods, a lot of our people are working in factories to produce those. A lot of people are working with logistic companies to deliver those. So we've got a large part. I mentioned look out your window.
Right.
You'll see a lot of buildings that aren't traditional offices. We support those buildings too with the technology that they need to be productive, to be safe. In some cases, like take a manufacturing facility, there's not as much flexibility to change a manufacturing line, but there's things that we can do with technology to help have that safer experience. And to Ram's point, there's a large part of our population that their jobs will be out there in the world. They can't do them from home. And,
right.
and that's a big part of what we're focused on, to help those people also be safe.
And all valid points. I mean, it's amazing to hear how your company is helping mitigate risk through this pandemic. And as this pandemic, this too shall pass is the proverb, as we all know, and we've heard before, and we're eventually the light is at the end of the tunnel. I do believe that. And we will get through this as a nation, as a globe, everybody that's experienced this. Everybody has been talking about COVID because it's headline news, right? Every day we wake up and we see the death tolls. Unfortunately, somebody's been impacted by it. The infectious rates going up. So, all these things that you're deploying from a technology, again, this too shall pass. So once this passed, I mean, we've seen history does have a tendency of repeating itself. So the Spanish flu pandemic in 1919, when it ended, for a decade, we had the roaring 20s. People were sharing alcohol in a bathtub. I mean, it went from wearing a mask to sharing alcohol in a bathtub, and I hope to God, and I pray for my children's sake that doesn't come back. But getting back into the workplace and into the environments, as you had pointed out, Eddie, it's very important to understand that partners and businesses like JLL are doing these things not only for COVID, but far past COVID to increase the workflow, productivity, and continue to help mitigate risk, whether it be COVID or something else in the future that we could, help avoid. So one thing that I would point out and I'd ask is, in the real estate market, we talk about the office space, we talk about manufacturing, and the transition of the two, or I should say how it kind of comes together. One thing that we've pointed out on Wiseup before in the past is the IoT solutions, the 5G. What's your platform, or I should say, what's your direction with 5G integration? How are you as a company deploying 5G networks throughout? Because you have workspace that is very either open floor plan or shared floors where you have common areas that, how does somebody like myself work in a space and I need my cell phone? This is my lifeline. If I don't have it, oh my God, I think I leave it home for a run and I panic, and it's like, so what technologies or what's the direction per se that JLL is taking on integration of 5G networks to support their clients' needs now as well as into the future? Because it's something that's front of mind. I mean, Verizon talks about it every 30 seconds. You turn on the television, 5G, good. Can you hear me now? Or is that Sprint? Whatever. But JLL, being that we spend so much time talking about the mitigation of risks due to the COVID and continue of the workflow and continue to help your clients along this way to stay productive. What's after COVID, and what's on the horizon? Because again, this will pass, and we need to be mindful of, again, I'm not belittling. So anybody listening, please don't think that, Anthony said COVID's just this little virus thing, it'll go away. It's a shame what has happened. It's awful. And it's no one person to be, blamed for this. But at the same time, as it passes, what are some of the technologies that you're seeing that are deploying that will be helpful in 5G integration?
So we had a 2-hour podcast. I'm not sure I could answer. There's so many wonderful things going on. So the short answer is yes.
Right.
Doing everything.
Check. Okay, we're good.
That's right. Yeah, come back next week and we'll talk more. But if you think about, God, there's so much that you said right there. So let's start with COVID. Yes, it's a horrible thing, but we are also learning a lot, and it's opening up opportunities. There were many technologies that, and Ram and I were just talking about this the other day, in January, we were doing stage presentations and we were talking to people about some of these technologies. And many people were saying, that's great. That's nice. Maybe someday we'll get to that. And almost overnight, some of these technologies literally went to must have. Right. We talked about experience. By the way, COVID, as horrible as it is, has also opened up some other health discussions, whether it's mental health or in the U.S., racial injustice. We're having conversations that we would not have had before, or maybe would not have had as in-depth or as open. And that enables us to create better spaces for people to bring their authentic selves to work. Ram talked about experience. We talk about the people a lot. So if I keep that focus on people and get to answering your question about how do we create the spaces where people feel like they can come, they can bring their best authentic self, and they can contribute to what their company does and provides. Let's go back and use the early days of cell phone as an example. Remember when a lot of us would run around and, I've got to go over here to get a better signal, or
right.
Remember
hang out the window.
That's right. Remember the buildings that you hated to go in because you couldn't get signal, especially some of the office towers in the U.S. in the early days when the cellular towers were pointed to the ground where we all
right.
were. They didn't point up to the towers. So the best space and the high, great views were the worst places to be for a cell phone. There was a period of time I can remember we really struggled with that. I predict that with 5G, it's going to be a bit of the same experience. And again, JLL is not rolling out 5G networks. We're looking to partner and take advantage of them as they come out.
Right.
There's incredible things we can do in the buildings with it. But my prediction is the buildings that are closest to and take advantage of the 5G network will be the ones that attract the platinum tenants, which increases the value of the building, because people aren't going to want to run around like the old days of, I can't get signal, or I hate this because right. I can't get the good experience. They're going to want to go in for the experience. And what does experience mean? It means being able, and Ram mentioned earlier, people with experience apps being able to communicate with the building, for us to communicate with them in that almost real time. We mentioned the motor technology earlier, and I mentioned IoT for us to be able to track utilization of space and make real-time decisions. That's a lot. You just think about utilization sensors. That's a lot of data that we're getting back from the building that we've never gotten in history from just, let's just think about one office and what that could produce. So 5G is a tremendous opportunity to be able to leverage that data, to push it out there to the edge, to give people that better experience, and to take advantage of a lot of these technologies that will enable us to create those safer spaces through those smart buildings and the experience that people will get.
It's amazing to me how far along we've came with wireless integration. I used to work for a manufacturer of wireless manufacturer of antennas, both active and passive systems, when it was LTE and 3G and then 4G. And one of the things that we were unaware of at the time was the HVAC companies were talking to the glass manufacturers, but the wireless manufacturers weren't talking to the glass manufacturers. And come to find out, when engineers and consultants were walking the spaces and saying, oh, we have great reception in this building because there's no windows up. And then when they slapped those low E glass energy efficient windows up, it was basically putting a cinder block around your cell phone antenna. So later to find out all these different things, whether it be repeaters where they can and can't work, or a full-blown distributed antenna system, how it can support 4G, now later 5G. And I'm sure by the time this podcast is released, it'll be 6G, 7G, 8G. I mean, it's evolving. And again, that brings me to a point, just to wrap these things all together. I mean, again, I thank you tremendously, both Ram and Eddie, for taking this opportunity to come on Wiseup today and talk about all the great things from a technology standpoint that this real estate empire, as I put it, as we recently spoke to your data center practices, it's amazing to me. We talk about the workflow, productivity, mitigating risk. It's seamless. It's the same thing over and over. It's consistent message. It gives that reassurance to the tenants that you have today, as well as future tenants that could come to you tomorrow, that your company is forward thinking and ensuring that the safety, well-being, number one, and number two, productivity has to continue. Otherwise, again, we lay down and die. One thing I would add is we didn't really touch on it, and we don't have to do a deep dive, because I want everybody to check out JLL on their website and go to their About page and see all the services that we offer, because we would have to spend a full day talking about where they're located, how they can come to market, what division, as Eddie pointed out, look out your window. There's something that could be happening with JLL right now, just looking out your window, wherever you sit and listening to this podcast. So one thing that we started to talk about earlier today was the retail market has flipped upside down, as we've seen. And I know that JLL also has a division called Red Rooster. So if one of you can just elaborate on that quickly, and not quickly, but go ahead and tell us all about the wonderful things that you're seeing from retail. Because I saw the JLL Red Rooster post maybe 6 or 7 months ago, and it was to me, growing up in the city of New York City, there was an old cafe called Horn and Harton, and it was like an automat. You would put in some coins and you would get your sandwich. And then the other 6 months ago, I'm reading this article from Red Rooster, and I'm going, what's old is new. But they were designing these automatic service for the retail, predominantly in the fast food services industry. Would you mind elaborating on Red Rooster and what you're seeing from a retail market as well?
Sure. And if you look back, and I think we put this out in press explaining that acquisition, because when we acquired it, it was very different for a real estate company to buy what they described themselves as a brand experience company. And if you think about retail, it's big, it's all about brand. And so the concept was, how do we take the brand of a retailer and apply that to the real estate? What can we do with the real estate to promote the brand? And that's what Big Red Rooster does, and quite successfully, by the way. If you look at, and there's a couple of examples that come to mind right now, and I'll go back to the example of the phone. We all went home. Some of us were used to ordering things from some of the big delivery services, but I'll use my 80-year-old father as an example. He had no idea he was stressed because he couldn't get his chocolate milk. That's another discussion about why my father's drinking chocolate milk. He was shocked that a bag of chocolate milk showed up on his front porch. I ordered it and had it delivered. And so he's just quizzing me, how did you do that? How did you do that? Now the man knows how to order chocolate milk and get it delivered to his house. He never knew that before. A lot of our retailers saw this boom and new clients that they never had, probably never would have had. My dad would never have ordered anything for delivery like that.
Right.
COVID changed. It was a massive change. So we're seeing with a lot of retailers, you know, there will be people that will continue to do that. And telemedicine, I was talking to a CIO the other day. He said people that are younger, they're seeing this massive growth in telemedicine. They don't expect senior citizens to stop going to physically see their doctor, but it will change the way they look at their retail medicine practices.
Right.
Similarly with our traditional retailers, we're seeing that a lot of them are saying they're going to take some of their stores that they have and how do they use that same real estate to create fulfillment centers. In the press yesterday, I believe it was, and Ram, keep me honest on this, one of the beauty chain companies was talking about embedding their stores in store in one of the massive retailers. And so those are some of the big changes that we're seeing. And I'm talking about the physical real estate there, but all of the concepts that we talked about, whether it's, you know, using their apps to buy, whether it's how Ram and I and our teams handle the logistical warehousing for all these goods and services to get it to you, whether it's your experience going into that store or going into that online app, technology plays such a huge role and part of that. Right. And then just one last comment, because you were talking earlier about all of us. You can have the best product in the world. I can have the best product in the world. But to your example of Wi-Fi and Windows, if we create something where the people see that we aren't cooperating or they don't get a good experience because we didn't talk to each other, that's going to frustrate them. They won't use it as well as if we work with each other to create this integrated good experience. Right. As people go back, regardless of the industry or the asset type that we're talking about.
I would also add to Eddie's point there, not to labor on this too much, but you know, retail, I think retail specifically has been greater subject to the acceleration that Eddie spoke to. So if we look at the appetite of people to move to e-commerce platforms and those kind of things, it was already on the way. COVID has been a catalyst. It's been a time machine. It's propelled us into that future. And if we think to the experience concepts that we discussed earlier in this discussion, I think retail stores will become points of experience as opposed to becoming points of sale. And so, you know, customers can have tactile relationships with the products that they buy in those stores, as opposed to going to the stores to buy those products. So I think it's a shift. It's a transformation in how retail is being viewed. And I think Big Red Rooster helps many of our clients achieve on that transformation journey.
Oh, well said. Well said. Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your hectic schedules to come on Wiseup today. Again, we're talking with JLL CIO and Managing Director, Edward Wagoner. And Ram, I really appreciate the opportunity to, speak and hear all the wonderful things that you and your organization is doing, how it's all integrating into one. And again, you're not, segmenting it. It's all collectively coming to, again, to put customer first, that mentality, customer first, listening to your customers' needs. You're shaping the future of real estate to make it a better world is a great slogan. I've read that, and I think I truly agree with it, because every building that I've been in, every synergy partner that I've worked with, they're spot on. It's a full service provider, as I would put it out to you. So again, folks, we cannot thank you enough for your comments. We'll keep on listening to Wiseup. Again, we could be streamed on Apple iTunes, Anchor, and/or Spotify. Check us out on LinkedIn, Instagram, via Twitter if you like. Add your comments, continue to add your comments, your likes, your shares. We love to hear back feedback. What could we do to improve your listening needs? And again, if you need to get in touch with somebody from JLL, if you don't mind giving the tag, is I believe it's www.usjll.com would be the best contact, or you could try to find either gentleman on LinkedIn or via Twitter, or in Chicago's Gino's Pizzeria or Giordano's. I don't know, Eddie, which one you favor. And Ram, where do you get poutine in Toronto? I don't know. I mean, I know food, so that's my thing. So anyway, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for this opportunity to hear from you firsthand and see all the wonderful things that JLL has done before, today, and what's looking for the future. It's great to hear and have you here on Wiseup. Thanks again.